The fence was a masterpiece of suburban craftsmanship. It wasn't just a barrier, it was a promise. We had built it ourselves, my wife Amelia and I, over 2 long, sun-drenched weekends. It was 8 feet tall, a sturdy fortress of dark, pressure-treated wood, with a beautiful lattice top and a solid locking gate. It was the best fence in the entire Oakmont Estates subdivision, and in a neighborhood where every lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life, and every house was a monument to tasteful conformity. That was no small feat. But the fence, as I was told with a polite yet chilling finality, was an abomination. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered to our mailbox in a crisp, pristine white envelope with the unmistakable HOA logo embossed on the top. I knew before I even opened it what it was about. Our fence, you see, was 2 feet too tall. The bylaws of the Oakmont Estates Homeowners Association, a document as thick and unforgiving as a medieval tome, stipulated that all fences were to be no taller than 6 feet. Our fence, built with a purpose far grander than mere aesthetics, was a full 8 feet. The HOA president, a man named Frank Garrison, was a figure of quiet, almost terrifying authority. He was a retired naval officer, a man who saw the world in black and white, and whose obsession with rules was surpassed only by his love for his own power. He had a way of speaking that made every word feel like a final, unappealable verdict. To him, the HOA was not a governing body. It was a military command, and its bylaws were his general orders. Frank's first letter was a warning, a dispassionate list of our violation, and a demand that we bring the fence into compliance within 30 days. He was even kind enough to include a copy of the bylaw in question, highlighted for emphasis. I showed it to Amelia that evening. She read it with a detached calm that always unsettled me. While I was prone to fits of panic and frustration, she was an island of stillness, her mind working with a quiet, lethal efficiency that I had come to both admire and fear. "We can't," I said, my voice heavy with a familiar helplessness. "We can't take it down. He'll hit us with fines, legal action." "We won't be taking it down," she replied, her gaze fixed on the letter. "And he won't be hitting us with anything." Amelia was a woman who kept her life and her work separate. I knew she was a lawyer, and a successful one at that. She worked long hours, often coming home after our daughter, Lily, was asleep. She never talked about her cases, and I, in my own blissful ignorance, never pressed her. I was a simple landscape architect, a man who found solace in the quiet logic of plant life. My world was in yards and gardens. Hers was in a realm of high stakes and high-minded principles I could only imagine. The fence, however, was something we had built together, a tangible manifestation of our greatest shared purpose: the protection of our daughter. Lily was a beautiful, spirited 5-year-old with a joyful, curious mind and a condition that made her prone to wandering. She didn't have a concept of boundaries, and a 6-foot fence was simply an invitation to climb. An 8-foot fence, a fortress built to a height she couldn't scale, was a necessity. It was our peace of mind. It was the only thing that allowed us to let her play in the backyard alone, even for a moment, without a constant, low-grade, fear in our stomachs. I detailed Lily's condition, the reason for the fence's height, and offered to plant a row of high hedges to further obscure its height from the street. It was a plea for humanity, an appeal to his sense of reason and compassion. His response arrived 3 days later. It was a single one-sentence letter with a new fine attached. He didn't acknowledge my plea. He didn't mention Lily. His words were a cold, hard slap in the face. The bylaws are not up for negotiation. The weeks that followed were a slow-motion descent into a Cold War. Frank sent more letters, each one more hostile than the last. He called the fence a blight on the community and an insult to the rule of law. He called our yard a junkyard because I had a few bags of mulch waiting to be spread. He began levying daily fines, a punishing, relentless financial assault. "He's a bully?" I said to Amelia one night, my frustration boiling over. "He's trying to make us bleed until we give in. We have to do something." Amelia just smiled, a small, knowing expression that seemed to say she was playing a game of chess while I was still trying to figure out the rules of checkers. "He's not a bully," she said. "He's a man who has never met a force more powerful than himself. He's about to..." I didn't understand. I wanted to march over to Frank's house and give him a piece of my mind. I wanted to stand on my front lawn and shout about my rights. But Amelia told me to be patient. "Wait," she said, her voice a calm whisper. "Wait for him to make a mistake." Frank's mistake came on a Saturday morning. I was in the garage, getting my tools ready to spread the mulch he had so despised. The air was cool and crisp, a perfect fall morning. The silence of the neighborhood was broken by the sudden, grating whine of a circular saw. I ran to the backyard, my heart pounding, a panicked rhythm against my ribs. What I saw made my blood run cold. Frank was there, standing with a small group of men he had deputized as his HOA patrol. They were a grim-faced assembly of homeowners who, like Frank, believed in the absolute authority of the bylaws. Frank held a power drill in his hand, his face a mask of self-righteous fury. He had already unfastened several of the pickets on the fence. Another man held a crowbar, and 2 more were holding a circular saw, its blade spinning with a terrifying hum. "Frank, what are you doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking with a mixture of disbelief and rage. I looked at Miss Mugg's smile on his face, taking corrective action per the bylaws. "You had your chance. You failed to comply. You can't do this," I yelled, running towards him. "This is private property. This is destruction of property." "I have the authority of the HOA," he said, holding up a laminated card that looked like a cheap imitation of a police badge. "We're just bringing the fence into compliance. The top 2 feet have to go." My mind reset. Lily. Where was Lily? My stomach lurched. I had left her inside, watching a cartoon, but she was a whirlwind of energy, and I had no idea what she was doing now. Just then, the back door of our house burst open. She saw the men with their tools, saw the gaping hole in her fence, and her face crumpled. She had an almost spiritual connection to the fence. It was her playhouse, her boundary, her safe place. It was the wall that kept her safe from the big world. To see it being torn down, destroyed by men she didn't know, was a violation of her entire universe. "No!" she cried, her little voice a desperate, heartbreaking wail. "My fence!" She ran towards it, her bare feet pattering on the grass. Frank and his men froze, their faces a mixture of surprise and discomfort. They had never expected a child to be a part of their little act of destruction. "Get out of here!" I roared, my protective instincts a firestorm in my blood. "Get away from my daughter." Just as I was about to grab Frank, Amelia appeared at my side. She was dressed in a simple t-shirt and yoga pants, but there was a stillness about her that was more terrifying than any army. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She simply walked towards Frank, her eyes fixed on his, and her voice, when she spoke, was a cold, precise instrument of authority. "From Garrison," she said, her voice a low, chilling whisper. "Step away from my property. Step away from my daughter." Frank, with his years of military training, was still in command of himself, but his confident smirk was gone. "I have the authority of the HOA sighed again, desperate plea for validation. "You have no authority here," Amelia said, a statement of fact as immutable as a mountain. "You have just committed a criminal act. You have trespassed on private property and engaged in the willful destruction of that property." Frank scoffed. "We'll see about that in court, Mrs. Vance." Amelia's eyes narrowed. It was a look I had never seen on her face. A look of pure, unadulterated fury. "You have no idea what you've just done," she said. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Amelia Vance," she said into the phone, her voice now a different kind of instrument, a professional, commanding tone I had only ever heard her use on her work calls. "I need to speak with the Chief Justice." Frank and his men, who had been listening with a mixture of annoyance and condescension, froze. The name hung in the air, a name that belonged to the highest court in the state, a name of unimaginable power and influence. "This is Judge Vance," she said, her voice calm and authoritative, a title and a voice that held the weight of 100 courtrooms. "I need a restraining order issued immediately against Frank Harrison and the Oakmont Estates Homeowners Association, and I need a warrant for his arrest for the destruction of my property." The world seemed to spin on its axis. Frank's face, a second ago full of smug self-righteousness, drained of all color. He looked at Amelia, his mouth agape, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. He had thought he was fighting a simple homeowner, a simple family. He hadn't just cut down a fence, he had just committed a felony against a sitting judge. The rest of the morning was a blur. A sheriff's deputy arrived within the hour, followed by a local news van. Frank, in his HOA uniform, was led away in handcuffs, his pathetic little laminated badge no match for the official one on the deputy's belt. The other men scattered, their loyalty to Frank evaporating in the face of legal reality. A week later, our fence was rebuilt, better and stronger than before, this time with the full, terrified cooperation of a new HOA board. The bylaws were revised. The height restriction on fences for the purpose of child safety was removed and a new bylaw was added. No member of the HOA patrol could ever, under any circumstances, take action against a homeowner's property without a court order. Frank Garrison was tried for trespassing and the destruction of private property. He was found guilty and given a stern punishment. It wasn't the kind of over-the-top movie-style vengeance you might expect, but it was far, far worse. The case was public. His name, his actions, and his downfall were a matter of public record. He was a laughingstock in the legal community, a man who thought his little fiefdom of an HOA was more powerful than the law. As for us, our lives went back to normal, but with a new layer of understanding. I had a new, profound respect for the woman I had married, the quiet, unassuming partner who carried a title of such immense authority. I no longer saw her simply as my wife. I saw her as Judge Amelia Vance, a woman who, in her quiet, patient way, could command the forces of the legal world with a single phone call. One evening, I watched as Lily played in the yard, her laughter echoing in the safe, enclosed space of our fortress. She was chasing a butterfly, her little feet a blur of motion. I watched her, and then I watched the fence, the sturdy, beautiful wall that had been built to protect her. And I realized something. It wasn't the fence that had protected her. It was the woman who had built it. The woman who, in her quiet, patient way, had waited for a bully to make a mistake, and then, with a single, calm, and terrifyingly precise statement, had brought the full, unyielding force of the law down upon him. The greatest power in the world wasn't a title, or a badge, or a bite. It was a mother's love and a judge's commitment to seeing justice served. It was a power that a man like Frank Garrison could never understand until it was too late.